Part 1. I never imagined my career studying death could lead me somewhere so full of life and terror. As a marine biologist, I thought I understood the ocean's secrets. But nothing prepared me for what waited in the blackness a mile beneath the waves. I'm writing this now with trembling hands, recalling the day I descended into the abyss to study a whale fall and found something still breathing in the dark. It began as a routine expedition, if sinking in a titanium sphere to the ocean floor can ever be routine. Our research vessel Orpheus had pinpointed a recent whale fall on the abyssal plain, and my colleagues and I were eager to explore this rare ecosystem. A dead whale can sustain a city of scavengers for decades in the deep an oasis of nutrients in an ocean desert. We wanted to document that process, the thriving life born from death. It was equal parts morbid and magnificent. On the morning of the dive, the North Pacific was eerily calm. The sea's surface was glass, reflecting a gray dawn sky. There was an electric feeling in the air as we boarded the submersible Nautilus, a 3-person deep submergence vehicle designed for extreme depths. I squeezed into the sphere alongside Dr. Lucy Torres and Sam Archer, our pilot. The hatch sealed with a heavy clank, and dim red interior lights cast our faces in a blood-tinged glow. I took a deep breath of filtered air, tinged with machine oil and our own nervous sweat, as Sam gave the okay to the surface crew. DSV Nautilus to surface, ready to dive, Sam called over the radio. His voice was steady, but I detected a hint of excitement. Lucy and I exchanged a grin. Months of preparation and remote sensing had led to this moment. Through a small porthole, I watched the winch cables release. With a shudder, our capsule was lowered into the embrace of the ocean. Water enveloped us, turquoise light dancing across the windows as we sank. I peered up for a last glimpse of daylight, just a green shimmer above before we descended past the photic zone. Sam engaged the thrusters, and the Nautilus angled downward. The ocean's blue faded to twilight, then darkness. Our external lights clicked on, cutting beams through the gloom. Tiny particles of marine snow drifted by, a constant gentle snowfall of organic debris. At 500 feet, Sam reported. Already, the water outside was a dim midnight blue. We sank deeper, gliding past ghostly jellyfish pulsating with pale light. A school of lanterfish scattered like stars as our lights approached. At 1,500 feet, the last rays of the sun gave up entirely. I felt a quiet come over me. Above us, waves and storms raged, but down here it was tranquil, silent but for the sub's hum and the creak of the hull adjusting to pressure. 1,000 meters, Lucy said, reading the depth gauge. About 3,300 feet down. Here we officially entered the abyssal zone, a realm of perpetual night. The pressure outside was already over 100 atmospheres, the weight of a skyscraper pressing on every inch of the Nautilus. My stomach fluttered at the thought. Yet I felt secure in our vessel's thick walls. This submersible was state-of-the-art, built to endure far more than this depth. Still, I kept my gaze on the hull, half expecting to see it buckle inward. It held firm. We passed 2,000 meters, nearly 1.25 miles deep. Few submersibles in history have ventured this far, and no whale could dive so low on its own. The realization gave me chills. We were entering a world no human eyes had seen, except through remote cameras. The excitement of discovery warred with a primal fear that fluttered in my chest. Every creak of the hull made my heart skip. Suddenly, Lucy gasped softly and pointed out the viewport. I pressed my face to the thick glass. Through the greenish spotlights, I saw the faint outline of something enormous below us on the seabed. It was like a submerged hill, pale and ghostly. My breath caught. We had found the whale. Sam slowed our descent and leveled off a short distance above the seafloor. Silt swirled in our lights, stirred by our arrival. There it is, I whispered. The carcass lay on its side amid a gentle slope of sediment. Even after months of decay, its size was breathtaking, a leviathan rendered lifeless. Once a majestic creature roaming endless blue, now fallen to the eternal night of the abyss. We circled slowly, illuminating the extent of the body. The whale's massive ribcage jutted through sloughing flesh like the frame of a shipwreck. Much of the skin and blubber had been stripped away by scavengers, exposing chalk-white bone. Yet parts of it remained oddly intact. The head, for instance, its one visible eye was clouded and sunken, but the surrounding flesh seemed almost untouched. Normally, within weeks deep-sea predators would have torn even the toughest hide. I frowned, noting this anomaly on my clipboard. Besides our own, the only light came from bioluminescent creatures speckling the corpse. Small crustaceans scurried along the seafloor, glowing pinpricks in the dark. I spotted pale eel-pout fish weaving between the ribs, their bodies snaking through currents. A few yards away, shapes drifted at edge of vision. Hagfish, I realized, dozens of them. Sinuous scavengers that tie themselves in knots as they devour rotting flesh. They fled from our lights, oozing milky slime in their wake. The scene was both wondrous and macabre. This was what we'd come for, a thriving tableau of life at the end of life. And yet, an uneasy quiet hung over the sight. I expected more activity, perhaps a cloud of amphipods swarming or a sleeper shark lazily gnawing at the remains. But the only sharks we saw were two dogfish circling warily, as if unwilling to draw closer. It felt as though we'd interrupted a funeral. The hairs on my neck stood on end. Lucy must have felt it too. "Why is it so empty?" she murmured. Before I could answer, a crackle came over our headset, static, then a garbled voice from topside. "Copy. Nautilus? We lost you for a moment. Confirm status." Sam responded that we were fine, attributing the interference to the depth. I wasn't so sure. The timing felt odd, like a whisper cut off as we arrived. We settled the sub a few meters from the carcass, careful not to stir up more silt. Our beams fixed on the great whale's torso. "All right," I said, exhaling. "Let's get to work." Hiding my nerves behind professionalism, I started dictating notes into the log. Lucy operated the external cameras, panning slowly over the whale's length. Sam monitored sonar and life support systems. Carcass length approximately 18 meters. Species, blue whale, adult female, Lucy narrated quietly. The image on our monitor was surreal. Giant vertebrae disappearing into darkness, the cavernous skull like some mythical sea monster. Schools of tiny silver fish flickered at the fringes of light, then darted away as quickly as they appeared. As I recorded water temperatures and chemical data, I noticed something unusual. "Lucy, hold the camera there," I said. On screen was a section of the whale's flank that looked strangely pristine, thick gray skin unmarked by decay or bite wounds. It was as if a large patch of the whale had been untouched by any scavenger. That made no sense. In a whale fall, every inch of tissue is usually consumed in succession. I felt a shiver despite the warm cabin. "It looks almost preserved," Lucy said. "Like something scared off the feeders mid-meal." Sam glanced back at us. "Scared them off? Down here? The only thing big enough to spook a sleeper shark might be a larger shark, or maybe an orca if one could dive this far, which they can't." He was right. This deep, there were few candidates. Giant squid aren't known scavengers, and nothing else would deter sharks except perhaps a massive toothed predator or something else entirely. I exchanged a concerned look with Lucy. Unspoken, the thought hung in the stale air. What cleared out an ongoing whale feast? I clicked on the audio recorder to capture ambient sound for our study. At first, we heard the soft crackle of shrimp and the hum of our sub. But underneath it, something else emerged. A low, rhythmic thumping. It was so faint I thought it might be the blood rushing in my ears. I turned the gain up, and the sound became a little clearer. Thump, thump, thump. It was steady, like a slow heartbeat echoing through the water. My mind raced for explanations. It could be the reverberation of the subzone engines? Or a distant ship's propeller? No, the cadence was too organic. Lucy's eyes widened as she listened. "Is that?" she whispered. I swallowed hard. It almost sounded like the heartbeat of a leviathan. But the whale before us was long dead. We shouldn't hear anything besides the environment. Sam tapped the gauge. "I'm picking up a slight pressure oscillation. Could be an underwater seismic event." He didn't sound convinced. The timing again felt too coincidental. As the thumping continued, I felt an inexplicable dread worm into my gut. I imagined that sunken eye of the whale watching us, listening with us. The rational part of me wanted to dismiss the noise as nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone, that in the mausoleum of the deep, something unseen was pulsing, alive and aware. I cleared my throat. "Let's not get spooked. Could be a malfunction or background noise. We'll note it and move on." Professional words, but my voice was unsteady. Lucy nodded, though she kept glancing at the whale's corpse beyond the glass. Sam muttered about checking the hydrophones later. We pressed on with our tasks, yet the oppressive silence had weight now. I described into the log how the whale fall had developed. Significant scavenger activity initially. Remains indicate stage 2 of decomposition. A sudden motion outside caught my eye, and I stopped mid-sentence. By the whale's ribcage, something was stirring. At first, I thought it was just a tangle of decayed tissue shifting loose. But it was rising, pushing aside bones as it moved. "Do you see that?" I whispered. Lucy swung the camera and we all squinted at the monitor. A thick coil or tentacle, impossibly pale, unfurled from within the whale's ribcage, then slipped out of sight into the sediment. It had looked fleshy, glistening. My mouth went dry. Perhaps a giant pycnogonid sea spider? Or some kind of hagfish mass? Whatever it was larger than any hagfish or worm I'd ever seen at such depths. No one spoke for a moment. Then Sam exhaled sharply. Just eels, maybe. Conger eels sometimes travel in groups. Probably got inside the ribcage. He sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Lucy bit her lip. Maybe, but I've never seen one that thick. It looked almost like she trailed off. None of us finished that thought. Like a tentacle? Like an intestine coming alive? No, best not to say it. I forced a chuckle that came out hollow. Well, the deep sea's full of surprises. Let's not jump to ghost stories. My attempt at levity fell flat. We resumed our work, but my hands were shaking. Deep down, I knew we had witnessed something that shouldn't be there. And in the back of my mind, a single thought pulsed in time with that still audible heartbeat. Something in this darkness is awake. Part 2. For a few heartbeats, none of us moved or spoke. The reality of what we had just witnessed hung in the stale air of the sub. My hands were still shaking. I could hear my own pulse in my ears, still matching that dreadful thumping from outside. It really happened, Lucy said softly, almost to herself. On her face was a mix of awe and terror. She started checking the recording monitors. Tell me we got that on video. Our external camera had been running the whole time. Lucy rewinded and played back the footage on a small screen. A shaky view of the whale's ribs filled the frame. We watched with held breath as the pale appendage slithered into view. On the recording, it was just a blanched blur crossing the lights before vanishing. The image pixelated and ghostly. If I hadn't seen it live, I might not have realized what it was. Not exactly crystal clear, I muttered. The video looked almost like an artifact or glitch. Sam cursed under his breath. No one's going to believe this, he said. Hell, I barely believe it. He wiped sweat from his brow with a trembling hand. Lucy pushed her hair back and exhaled slowly. We all saw it. Something alive is inside that whale, or under it. She turned to me. I searching. What do we do? Do we surface and report this? I glanced at the viewport, where the enormous silhouette of the whale lay quietly in our lights. Nothing stirred now. The idea of leaving was tempting. Every instinct in me wanted to get far away from whatever that thing was. But another part of me, the scientist, was fiercely curious. This could be a discovery beyond our wildest dreams. If we left now, we might never find it again. And who would believe us? Sam didn't hesitate. We abort, he said firmly, flicking a few switches to begin ascent protocols. To hell with curiosity. That thing. It could be dangerous. We need to get topside. He was already adjusting ballast controls when Lucy put a hand on his arm. Wait, she said. If we go now, we lose our chance to document this properly. Her voice shook, but there was resolve in it. This is something completely unknown. We have a responsibility. Lucy, it nearly took my head off, Sam snapped, gesturing at the monitor. Or whatever that was came damn close to the sub. Responsibility or not, our safety, I raised my hands to both calm them and stall the argument. I agree our safety comes first, I said, swallowing the lump of fear in my throat. But if we can get just a bit more data, safely, I think we should. At least enough to confirm what we're dealing with. Sam looked at me like I was crazy. You cannot be serious. I didn't blame him. The rational part of me was screaming to leave. Yet I also felt the lure of the unknown. Just enough to have evidence, I said quietly. If we return with only that video, they might dismiss it as nothing. If we can figure out anything more, size, behavior, maybe a sample, Lucy nodded, following my thought. We could try to collect a sample from the carcass near where it was. Or even capture it on the high-res camera from another angle. Sam's jaw tightened. He looked back and forth between us in disbelief. You two have lost it, he muttered. It's not worth our lives. We don't know what that thing can do. He was right. My pulse was still racing and cold sweat clung to my back. But I forced out. That's why we do it carefully. At the first sign of danger, we abort and ascend. Agreed. After a tense moment, Sam gave a curt nod. One sign. Then we're out. Before anything else, I reached for the radio mic. It was procedure to check in before altering a dive plan. And I suddenly craved the reassuring voice of our surface coordinator. Nautilus to Orpheus, come in, I spoke, trying to keep my tone even. A hiss of static answered. I tried again, enunciating clearly. Surface, this is Nautilus. We have encountered something unexpected. Do you read? Only static. Maybe the whale's bulk or the topography was blocking our acoustic signal. Sam flipped the comm switch off and on, trying a different frequency. A crackle, then a faint voice broke through in broken syllables. "Till us, read you, interference," and then a sharp whine of static cut it off. "Orpheus, say again," I practically begged. The return was only silence. "It's no use," Sam said tightly. "Something's jamming us. We might get a signal if we ascend 50 meters or so. Let's do our checks first, then we'll rise a bit," I replied. If we were going to investigate more, we had to accept we were effectively alone down here. Lucy was already prepping the rover. The RV, remotely operated vehicle, was a small tethered drone we carried for close inspections. It had its own lights and camera and could squeeze where the sub couldn't. If we were going to spy on whatever lurked in that carcass, the RV was our best bet without putting ourselves in its path. Within minutes, we had the RV ready. Lucy took the controls at her station. Through the external camera feed, I watched as a small panel on our sub's hull slid open and the RV, a squat, yellow robot about the size of a suitcase, deployed on its tether. "RV deployed," Lucy reported, her voice all business now despite the quiver I knew she felt. On the monitor, the drone's lights blinked on, casting a sharp beam into the darkness ahead. "Video feed is live." Another screen lit up with the RV's point of view. It faced the whale's midsection from a few meters away. From this lower angle, the carcass loomed even larger. I could see the underside of the massive jaw and rows of brush-like baleen plates, hanging like an alien curtain. The RV lights caught reflective gleams in the sediment, maybe scales of fish or bits of cartilage. "Moving RV forward," Lucy said. With gentle controls, she guided the drone closer to a yawning gash in the whale's flank between two ribs. Entering the cavity. On the RV cam, the view shifted as the little machine crept through the ragged opening. We all leaned closer to the monitors. The interior of the whale was a mess of shadows and floating particles. It was surreal seeing the inside of so large a creature. Our lights revealed great slabs of decaying muscle and strings of connective tissue drifting like curtains in a breeze. Bones jutted from the flesh, ribs from the side, and farther and I glimpsed the great bulk of the whale's spine. A few small creatures scuttled away from the ROV's light. I spotted amphipods, tiny shrimp-like scavengers, flitting in swarms. Pinkish Ostax bone worms tufted the whale's bones like ghostly flowers, swaying in the current. The scene was grotesque and fascinating in equal measure. "Keep eyes sharp," Sam murmured, as if we weren't already glued to the screens. He had relaxed his grip on the ascent controls and was now peering over Lucy's shoulder. Lucy rotated the drone's camera slowly, sweeping the light across the cavity. "No sign of our friend yet," she said under her breath. I studied the feed. The drone's light glinted off something in the darkness. "There," I said, pointing at the monitor. The camera centered on it. For a moment, I thought it was just a smooth whale vertebra slick with decay. My heart jumped thinking it was an eye, but it wasn't. Next to it, something pale drifted. It looked like the partial carcass of a large fish, maybe a shark about a meter long, torn open and half consumed. Its dead eye flashed in the ROV's light. I exchanged a glance with Lucy. A shark that size could have been drawn by the whale's scent and ended up becoming prey itself. The creature we'd seen must have attacked it. That might explain why no live sharks remained around the whale fall. They'd been frightened off or eaten. Lucy guided the RV deeper, maneuvering past the remains of organs and sinew. The tether line unspooled behind it, occasionally tangling on a jagged bone. Each time that happened, she paused to carefully adjust, and I could hear her breath hitch until the tether came free. We were all tense. Each creak of the sub or whir of the ROV's motor sounded too loud. My eyes flicked from the ROV feed to our external cams, then to the sonar display, which still showed only the massive bulk of the whale and some smaller blips of scavengers. No big moving contacts, yet. The drone's camera moved toward the whale's interior spinal column, a tunnel-like space amid the ribs. I felt a strange reluctance in the pit of my stomach, as if we were trespassing somewhere sacred or profane. The beam illuminated the end of the tunnel where the whale's ribcage met the sediment of the seafloor beneath it. At that junction, the whale's bulk pressed into the soft mud. There was a dark space gouged underneath, an opening into the seabed itself. "Is that a burrow?" I murmured. It did look like one. The underside of the whale was partially sunken, and beneath it the RV revealed a cave-like hollow in the ocean floor. The mud there was disturbed, as if something had repeatedly pushed in and out of it. I felt the hair on my arms rise. Lucy brought the RV a little closer to the burrow entrance. The hole was more than a meter wide, disappearing at an angle under the earth. It was completely black inside. She angled the camera, trying to peer in without actually entering. Can't see how deep it goes, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. None of us wanted to suggest actually sending the drone into that hole. The tether might snag, or worse, whatever lived there might. Without warning, the feed went haywire. The RV camera jolted as something yanked the little vehicle violently. What the? Pull it back, Sam shouted, but Lucy was already on it, reversing the thrusters. The video spun crazily, smashing views of mud, then whale flesh, then mud again. Through the static-laced feed, I caught a glimpse of movement, pale, rapid movement, from that burrow. A surge of silt erupted and a flash of white filled the camera. It looked like teeth? Static. Lucy gasped and hit the winch control to reel the tether in. On our external cam, I saw the tether line thrashing. Something was pulling the RV deeper into the burrow. The line went taut. Cut it loose, I said urgently, my heart in my throat. She hit the emergency release. The tether severed with a soft pop. On the monitor, the RV's feed dissolved into gray fuzz. The line snapped back toward us, suddenly slack. For a moment, none of us breathed. My mouth was dry. The RV was gone, snatched by whatever lurked under that whale. If we had any doubt before, we didn't now. Something down here was aggressive, enormous, and intelligent enough to ambush. A low scraping noise drew our attention to the viewport. The sub lurched subtly. Sam grabbed the controls. Did you feel that? He hissed. I did. A vibration, through the hull. It wasn't the heartbeat this time. It was as if something bumped the submersible. Before I could respond, a heavier jolt suddenly rocked the Nautilus. I was thrown against my harness. Lucy cried out as she was nearly tossed from her chair. Sam swore, hands flying over the controls. On instinct, he raised our thrusters to full power, trying to back us away. Through the front viewport, the lights caught a cloud of sediment and the massive bulk of the whale carcass shifting. The whale's body was sliding across the seafloor, towards us. Jesus, it's moving the whole carcass, I shouted. Sam slammed the vertical thrusters. The sub began to rise, scraping against something the whale's fin, as the corpse was shoved into us. The noise of metal hull against bone was a banshee screech that set my teeth on edge. I held onto the nearest handle as the Nautilus tilted. For one heart-stopping moment, our starboard side viewport was filled with the slick, rotten flank of the whale as it rolled toward us, pushed by an unseen force. Then, as Sam gained some lift, the sub cleared the top of the carcass. We hovered about a meter above the whale now, no longer entangled. All of us stared downward in horrified disbelief. The entire 60-ton corpse beneath us was shifting, being dragged. Silt billowed as it lurched. And as it moved, something began to emerge from underneath. In the stark light of our beams, I saw the mud-caked outline of a gigantic form. Pale, glistening flesh, the suggestion of multiple coil-like limbs unwrapping. My mind could barely comprehend the scale. It was rising up right under where the whale had been. One massive appendage, then another, slid into view, each as thick around as an oil drum. Go, 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 Lucy screamed. Sam needed no further urging. He was already angling the sub away, diverting power to the thrusters. The Nautilus veered backward and upward, away from the nightmare below. I caught one last sight of the whale carcass being pulled aside like a discarded toy. Beneath it, something sprawling and pale writhed in the darkness, finally free of its cover. The lights only caught a fraction of it, a glistening, rubbery mass, mottled gray and white. I thought I saw a huge disc-like shape that might have been a sucker, or an eye reflecting our light with a dull shine. Then Sam hit full throttle and our sub shot away into the black water, leaving that hulking monstrosity behind. I found myself shaking uncontrollably, every nerve screaming. In the space of a minute, our mission had transformed into a fight for survival. Surface. Sam was yelling into the radio. Emergency ascent. Emergency ascent. He flipped the ballast release. Alarms began to ping as we started rising. I pressed against the glass of the top viewport, watching the whale false sight grow distant beneath us. In the faint glow of our fading lights, I could just make out the enormous shape below swirling in the stirred-up sediment. My breath came in gulps. None of us spoke a word. We were rising, but I didn't feel relief. Because somewhere in the dark beneath us, that impossible creature was still moving, and I feared it was following. Part 3. We rocketed upward through the darkness, but safety was still far away. The depth gauge on the console ticked rapidly down. 1,800 meters. 1,700, 1,600. Sam gritted his teeth, white-knuckled hands gripping the controls. The Nautilus groaned from the strain of our ascent and the punishment it had taken. I dared to hope we'd outrun the thing. The water around us was pitch black. Our external lights had blown out or been switched off in the chaos. Inside the cabin, red emergency LEDs cast an ominous glow. Lucy was sobbing softly, one hand pressed to a bleeding scratch on her forehead. My own heartbeat thudded painfully in my throat. At about 1,500 meters, a shudder ran through the hull. Our ascent abruptly stopped with a jerk. The Nautilus began to shake violently. "No, no," Sam gasped, frantically working the controls. The sub wouldn't rise. A terrible scrape vibrated from below. We were caught on something. No, something had caught us. A sudden yank nearly pulled me from my seat. We lurched downward, the depth gauge rising again. 1,600. 1,700 m. The realization hit like ice. The creature had grabbed us and was dragging us back into the deep. Lucy let out a broken sob. "It has us." Sam threw the engines into full reverse, desperate to break free. The thrusters roared, but the sub only quivered. Another powerful tug pulled us deeper. The metal frame creaked in protest. If it pulled us much deeper, the hull would implode in an instant. A control panel behind us burst with a shower of sparks as circuits overloaded. The cabin lights flickered wildly. A sharp crack suddenly echoed through the sub. The cabin window on Lucy's side spiderwebbed with fine fractures. A pressurized jet of water burst through a pinpoint hole in the glass with a shriek. Lucy screamed. The boiling jet struck her square in the chest, a spray of freezing seawater under immense pressure. She convulsed once and collapsed to the floor. "No," I cried. I lunged toward her, but the torrent was already subsiding. Only a few drops dribbled now through the tiny crack, which was quickly plugging with pulverized debris. Lucy lay eerily still in a puddle of icy water. Sam darted a horrified look back at her limp form, but there was no time to mourn. With a furious curse, he turned back to the controls, determined to save at least the two of us. I dropped to my knees beside her. My shaking fingers felt for a pulse in her neck. Nothing. Her eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, unblinking. The high-pressure spray had stopped her heart in an instant. Lucy was dead. "Damn it," Sam yelled. The sub lurched again, a reminder that we were seconds from joining her. We were nearing 1,800 meters and descending fast. Water dribbled from the cracked window, the hull pinging under the escalating pressure. My every instinct refused to die here. Through a haze of panic, an idea flickered. The sonar. We had a powerful mapping sonar. If I cranked it to max output, maybe I could stun that thing holding us. I scrambled to the console. "Hold on, Sam," I shouted. With trembling hands, I overrode the sonar's safety limits and aimed it downward. A deep, thrumming vibration was already resonating through the hull, the creature's dreadful heartbeat, as if sensing our fear. I gritted my teeth and slammed the manual trigger. A deafening ping rang out, a shockwave of sound blasting into the depths. The sub rocked from the recoil. My skull felt like it split as the noise hammered our ears. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then an unearthly screech reverberated through the depths. Our entire vessel lurched wildly, flung like a toy in a tantrum. We spun as whatever held us recoiled. "We're free," I shouted, dizzy from the acoustic concussion. "Sam, go." Sam, disoriented but understanding, slammed the thrusters to full power. The Nautilus hurtled upward once more. 1,700, 1,600, 1,500 m. The numbers on the gauge began falling again as we ascended. Below us, a pale shape writhed in the murk. An immense limb swung upward, clipping our stern with a glancing blow. The sub yawed sideways, but kept climbing. Another tentacle sliced through the water just behind us, narrowly missing. Then, suddenly, the turbulence ebbed. We left it behind. For an instant, our lights caught sight of the monster below, a colossal tangle of pale limbs thrashing in what looked like agony or fury. Then it disappeared into the black water as we ascended. The depth gauge plummeted, 1,200, 1,800 m. The water around us brightened from black to dark blue. We were racing out of the abyss. Inside the cabin, I slumped into a seat, chest heaving. Only then did I truly register the lifeless form of Lucy floating at my feet, her body gently bumping against the base of the console with each vibration. A cold ball of grief and anger lodged in my throat. At 500 meters, a burst of static crackled from the radio, then the blessed sound of a human voice. "Nautilus, Nautilus, come in." "This is Orpheus. We read emergency is sent. Do you copy?" Sam grabbed the mic like a lifeline. "Orpheus, Nautilus here," he shouted, voice cracking. "Emergency, our sub's damaged, one crew member down. Request immediate recovery." There was a stunned pause, then the surface coordinator replied, "Copy that, Nautilus. We have your beacon. ETA 4 minutes to retrieval. Hang tight." I closed my eyes, releasing a breath of gratitude. 4 more minutes. We just had to hold on 4 more minutes. Sunlight filtered into the water around us now, a faint green-blue radiance growing brighter by the second. After hours in darkness and horror, the sight was almost otherworldly. Lucy should have been here to see this. My throat tightened. I reached over and gently closed her eyes, tears blurring my vision. As we drifted those last agonizing moments at the surface, I held my breath, ears straining. Was it just the blood in my temples? Or was something down there, far below, still beating steadily, in defiance and rage? I squeezed my eyes shut. "Please," I begged silently, "stay down there. Stay in the darkness where you belong." Part 4. Blinding daylight stabbed my eyes as the hatch cracked open. Rough hands hauled Sam and me onto the Orpheus's aft deck. The crew swarmed around us, wrapping blankets over our shoulders and shouting questions. I caught a glimpse of the medics' horrified faces as they hoisted Lucy's limp body out of the sub. "Get them clear. Give them space." That was Captain Harris's voice, barking orders. Through the haze of my exhaustion, I saw him stride towards Sam and me. My knees buckled and I sank onto a deck crate. Everything felt too bright, too loud. The ship's engines throbbed under my feet, a deep, regular vibration that reminded me horribly of something else. I winced and tried to steady my breathing. Sam stood rigid next to me, pale as a ghost. Lucy," he croaked, staring at the medics who were zipping a black body bag over our colleague. One of the ship's doctors gently drew him aside to check him for injuries, but Sam didn't resist. He just kept shaking his head in dazed disbelief. Captain Harris knelt in front of me. "What happened down there?" he asked, voice low but urgent. His weathered face was etched with concern. My mouth opened, but no words came out at first. What could I say? I glanced toward the submersible now secured on deck. The sub was wrecked, viewport cracked, a camera torn off, deep gouges in the hull. The crew were already swarming over it, shouting about the state of it. Harris followed my gaze. His eyes widened at the extent of the damage. "Did you hit something? An underwater obstacle?" I let out a hollow, shaky laugh. "An obstacle? Yeah, you could say that." Some of the crew nearby exchanged confused, worried looks. I realized how insane the truth would sound to them. But the captain needed to know Lucy was dead and our sub nearly destroyed. "It wasn't a rock or a reef," I said softly. My voice felt disconnected, as if someone else were speaking. "The whale fall. Something at the whale fall attacked us." Captain Harris frowned. "Attacked? By what? A shark? A giant squid?" Nearby, Patel murmured about giant squids or other large predators, grasping for an explanation. No, my voice sharpened, surprising myself. "It wasn't a shark or a squid," I insisted. "It was something huge. Something I've never seen before." The crew fell silent. The crew stared at me with a mix of disbelief and fear. Sam suddenly broke away from the doctor tending him. He stepped forward, voice rising. "It grabbed the sub," he blurted out. "Wrapped itself around us. Pulled us down. It killed Lucy." His voice cracked on her name. I reached out a hand to steady Sam's arm. He was trembling violently now, face contorted with anguish. "Easy," I murmured. Captain Harris rose to his full height, looking from Sam's haunted eyes to the wrecked submersible and Lucy's covered body on the deck. Whatever skepticism he might have had was giving way to a dawning horror. He ran a hand over his mouth. "If there's something down there, we'll notify the Navy. But right now, you two need medical care," he said, trying to stay calm. "No," I said hoarsely. "No one should go back down there." My hands were shaking again. "Captain, you have to understand. This wasn't just some overgrown squid. It was far bigger. It felt old, ancient, truly like something out of a nightmare." A heavy silence fell. The only sounds were the churn of the ship's engines and the lap of waves against the hull. Captain Harris's expression softened. "I believe you saw something," he said gently. "We'll document it soon, but right now you need medical care." The ship's doctor stepped up and guided me firmly onto a low bench. I hadn't even realized how badly I was shivering. In seconds, a foil blanket was wrapped snugly around me and an oxygen mask pressed to my face. I barely noticed. More than once, I've wondered if Lucy would still be alive had I agreed to abort the dive at the first sign of danger. That thought will haunt me for a long time. Sam collapsed to a sitting position beside me. His eyes were unfocused, shock taking hold. I put an arm around his shoulder, and he leaned into me, two survivors clinging together in disbelief. Nearby, Captain Harris conferred quietly with a few officers, casting uneasy glances at our battered sub. The Orpheus began to turn, its engines rumbling louder as we set a course away from the site. They were taking us home. I felt a mixture of relief and dread. Relief to be alive on the open air, under a blue sky. Dread knowing that below that same sky, down in the darkness, it was still there. And now only Sam and I truly understood the danger. Eventually, Captain Harris returned to our side. "We've radioed ahead," he told us. "We're going to keep this quiet for now, call it a freak accident or equipment failure, until we have more data." I simply nodded numbly. Low profile. I understood. Announcing that a mysterious sea monster might be roaming the depths could cause panic and invite a media circus. Part of me was fine with never speaking of it again. Another part of me wanted to scream the truth for the whole world to hear. As we steamed farther from the site, I found myself gazing back at the receding blue horizon. Somewhere beyond it, far below, was the place that would forever haunt my nightmares. I looked down into the calm ocean water trailing in our wake. Everything appeared normal, just an empty sea. But I knew, with cold certainty, that something deep below was still awake. Part 5. It's been 2 months since we escaped that abyss, and I still can't rid myself of the memory of it. I wake up in the black of night to the phantom echo of thump, 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 as if my own heart remembers that awful rhythm. Other times I jolt awake from nightmares of pale, titanic limbs coiling around me or an immense eye watching from the darkness. In those moments, I'm back in that submersible, the darkness closing in and something unimaginable coiled around us. I've replayed the events endlessly, trying to find some meaning or some mundane explanation. More than once, I've wondered if Lucy would still be alive had I agreed to abort the dive at the first sign of danger. The official report concluded that a seismic event caused the whale carcass to shift and damage our sub. The RV we lost was never recovered, leaving us with no direct evidence of what we saw. Lucy's death was attributed to mechanical failure under stressful conditions. That tidy story has been accepted by our research institute and by Lucy's grieving parents. It's easier for everyone to believe a tragic accident rather than consider the alternative we know to be true. Sam and I haven't spoken much since the debriefings. We exchanged a few terse emails, mostly logistical matters, insurance forms, funeral arrangements. In person, it's been hard to face each other. The last time I saw him, at Lucy's memorial service, he looked hollow and haunted. I'm sure I did too. There's an unspoken pact between us not to talk about what we encountered. Not because we doubt it happened, but because acknowledging it out loud feels like reliving a nightmare neither of us can bear. I've taken an indefinite leave from deep-sea research. The very thought of going out on the water again, of descending into that silent void, makes my chest tighten with panic. I find myself avoiding even the harbor. Instead, I've spent a lot of time at home, poring over deep ocean data and historical accounts as if I might find some reference to the thing we saw. So far, I've found nothing concrete. A few old mariners' tales of sea devils dragging ships into the depths, some modern sonar anomalies like the so-called bloop recorded in 1997, initially speculated to be a giant marine animal. But nothing that comes close to what we encountered. Honestly, I doubt anyone would believe us even if we had concrete proof. Who would accept that an undiscovered leviathan could be lurking at the bottom of the ocean, only revealing itself when a feast like a whale fall draws it in? Even I struggle to accept it, and I saw it with my own eyes. Sometimes I second-guess myself. Was it really as enormous as I remember? Could the darkness and stress have magnified my perception? Then I'll have a flash of memory, those massive tentacles slithering across the viewport, the way the entire sub was battered around, and I know it was no exaggeration. In truth, if anything, our minds likely shielded us from fully comprehending its horror. In quiet moments, I catch myself listening to the mundane hum of my refrigerator or the pulse in my ears, and I freeze, heart hammering, convinced for one irrational second that I'll hear that heartbeat from the abyss creeping into my world. Every time I sink into a bath or even watch the ocean on television, I feel a prickle of dread. The ocean used to be my passion, my place of wonder. Now I'm afraid of its depths in a way I never imagined possible. I try to focus on Lucy's legacy, on the data we collected before things went wrong. Lucy would have wanted that. We did gather some useful scientific observations about whale fall ecology in those first calm moments. But whenever I start writing up those findings, my mind drifts back to the later moments, to that slow, rhythmic thumping, and the sight of something impossible stirring in the darkness. That overshadows every benign fact I could report about hagfish or boneworms. Maybe one day I'll return to the field. Or maybe not. Sam hinted he plans to quit the institute and move inland, perhaps back to his hometown in Kansas. I can't blame him. I've considered doing the same. At least far from the sea, I might sleep without nightmares. We know so little about our own planet's oceans. People often say the deep sea is less explored than the moon. I used to find that inspiring. Now it chills me. Because somewhere in that vast, black unknown, there is something. Maybe it's one of a kind, some prehistoric survivor or a mutant abyssal giant. Or maybe there are others. I'm not sure which thought is more terrifying. Sometimes I even wonder if that whale's demise was mere chance at all, or if the Leviathan somehow helped bring it down, baiting its hunting ground with a titanic carcass. Perhaps we were trespassers at a dinner table set long before we arrived. Every fiber of my being hopes that the creature we encountered stays far, far below, content in its lightless realm. I hope no other curious team ever stumbles across it. Some mysteries, I've come to believe, should stay buried in the depths. So far, no expedition has returned to that cursed patch of Pacific seafloor, and I pray none ever does. I'm writing all this down now partly in hope of exorcising it from my mind, and partly as a warning. If you ever find yourself out on the open ocean, peering down into that endless abyss, remember, we've not truly tamed this earth. There are places we've barely glimpsed, and things living there we are utterly unprepared for. In those depths, we were not fearless explorers at the top of the food chain. We were prey. We paid a heavy price for that trespass. On the ocean floor off that remote Pacific coast, a whale fall slowly decays, nourishing its ecosystem. It's a natural miracle of renewal. But I know, somewhere near it in the cold darkness, there is something else. Something that does not belong in our world of light. Something the textbooks can't name. Something that still breathes in the deep, patient, and hungry.